everyone, this is Zebo and welcome to today's Ultimate Hero Guide video. So the Ultimate Hero Guide is an old series which I had on the channel, but I got kind of lazy, so I didn't really continuously do it on a consistent basis. But in today's video, I'm gonna revive this series, and I think to start this series off, I'm gonna do one of my hottest waifu, and there is none other than Half Vampire Priscilla. So in today's video, we're gonna run through the below contents as to how to use Priscilla within the different game modes, right? The Colosseum teams for her, the arena teams for her, her equipments, as well as how you want to pair her up with other units in terms of team compositions. We'll talk about it. And lastly, I'll end of the video by talking about how to use her within arena itself, as well as how to counter her within that same game mode. So we'll begin the video by talking about the role of this unit, how she actually plays out, as well as her general stats distribution and how she's really good within the different game modes itself. So I'm not going to talk too much about the description for her normal attack, her chain skill, her special ability. For this, you can actually just go to her How Woody video. I'll link it on the card above, and you guys can just watch it because I'll be probably repeating the same thing from that video, so I'm not going to do that. But instead, I'm just going to analyze her kit as a whole to let you guys know how she actually functions as a unit. So first of all, she has a really high attack, 1129. Not the best, but it's one of the top tier in terms of rankings, at least for the attack stats compartment. And her HP number, right, is one of the highest in the game. So she's pretty tanky, at least she has a ton of HP. And in terms of defense, she's pretty good for a range unit, right? 342. It's probably top 5 or at least top 10 in terms of ranking. So overall, you can see that she's a pretty beefy unit that is able to deal some damage just off her stats alone. And her party buff is 40% shield increase on battle start, so it's a unique party buff, at least to the unique heroes, because she's the very first one. The other units with this party buff is Lorraine. Yeah, that's the only other unit, so you probably won't use Lorraine as much, and she will be a good addition if you want to have this party buff on your team itself. And she also have a bit of weapon skill regen speed, a bit of skill damage, so you can see that she's kind of reliant on her weapon skill to a certain extent. So if you just briefly talk about her abilities as a whole, right, she has a debuff, she has a heal, she has a damage reduction, she has a damage increase. So her role as a unit per se, right, is simply an attacker that is able to sustain and trade blows with a lot of different units just based off her kit itself. Because if she attacks you and she has an exclusive weapon, which in most cases she will be able to inflict additional damage, reduce your attack by 25% for 2 seconds, and yeah, just do a lot of damage. And overall, I think Priscilla does her job really well. She counters melee unit to a certain extent because she has movement speed, so she can kite them, and she's able to attack away, right? She doesn't have to close in to hit you. And the best part about her is that her weapon skill itself actually counters melee unit very hard depending on how you time it. So that's her role as a unit. And in terms of whether or not you need her exclusive weapon to make her work, the answer is yes, because Priscilla is more of a PvP unit and arena unit. She doesn't really fit well in raids, so you can't just slot her with a random EX weapon from another unit and then expect her to work. And in terms of her utility as a unit, I say Priscilla is probably skewed more towards the PvP contents, your Colosseum, your arena, a little bit of story contents, but I don't think she functions as well within your like other PvP content such as Orbital Lift, Amazon Land, because she doesn't really buff the team a whole lot other than her party buff, and she doesn't have very big AoE damage, right? She doesn't hit a lot of enemies all at once, so she can't clear the minions fast enough. And her weapon skill is not like FP, you know, not a one hit chain kind of thing. So that's one thing that she's very lacking, at least in terms of the PvE content. But at least for the PvP side, she's one of the top tier unit, at least within the current meta of the game as we are speaking in this video. Now next up, let's move towards the accessories as well as the merchandise and card option. So for the weapon itself, like I mentioned, her exclusive basket is necessary if you want to run her within the various PvP contents. So for the accessories options, you have a few options. So the most premium accessory for all units is definitely Earth Necklace, because it has a high defensive stat, it has weapon skill regen speed, as well as a defense decrease negation, which is very valuable against the myriad of units with resist downs as well as defense decrease. So Lilith, Scintilla, and many others. And then on top of that, you have attack boost as well as a HP boost. And if you are a unit that has a heal, right, this accessory basically got it covered. It's a really good end game, but not everybody has the luck as well as the looks to get it. So if you do not have an earth necklace, what are your other options? You can firstly, number one, run your mirror earring of faith. So this one will provide you with a little bit of attack, a little bit of defense. It's weaker than earth necklace, but it's better than nothing. And you can go for like a lot of lines of sub options. So the one that you want to look out for is definitely weapon skill regen speed plus 12%, because that will be one of the biggest advantage that Priscilla can get, having the ability to spam her weapon skills quickly, because she's a unit that is able to chain pretty easily, sometimes 2 weapon skills and other times 3 weapon skills. So it's a pretty stable unit, at least in terms of the weapon skill compartment. And then you want to run for optimal sub options depending on your personal budget as well as your luck in terms of rolling. So that's one accessory you can go for. If you want to go for like the straight up brawly kind of build, right, going for Mad Panda Brush is not a bad option, because Mad Panda Brush is one of the best defensive slash offensive accessory that doesn't provide weapon skill regen speed. So in comparison to the like mirror earrings, right, Mad Panda Brush is just a accessory which you equip on your unit and then you stand on the spot and fight your enemies. And because of the amazing defensive stats that this accessory offer, oftentimes you're able to out-trade your opponent, and before you actually uses your weapon skill, or before your opponents actually uses their weapon skill, you'll probably kill them. And yeah, if you trade hits, right, and your opponent doesn't have this and you have this, you have the better edge in terms of defensive capabilities. But let's say if you do not have any of these epic accessories, you can also go for the Black Crown Ring, which provide a ton of defensive stats as well as a bit of weapon skill regen speed. So this is one of the accessories which I strongly recommend, at least in the current point in time. So if you're somebody who just start out the game, like I mentioned, the best beginner accessory for everyone to farm easily is obviously the Golden Pocket Watch, because it offers a good stat, right, in terms of defense, weapon skill regen speed, as well as many other stats that is helpful in terms of dealing more damage or chaining your opponent more easily. So that's for the accessories compartment. And for the cards compartment, I usually will work on 2 defensive cards. So you want any combination of 2 defensive cards which will give you plus 14% defense, but sometimes you might want to equip Priscilla with injury negation card, because the Breathe Fire ability from Lin actually goes through her shield, which kind of breaks her advantage. Like, her style is she wants to use her shield to out-trade you in terms of HP and win from there. So you might want to run an injury negation card on her if she's one of your main units. And then for the merchandise portion, if you need a bit of damage, Statue of Bravery is definitely your best accessory, right, in terms of dealing a little bit more damage. I don't recommend your Smiley Face Cushion, because having a lot of shield is not a good thing, especially when there's a bunch of players with a lot of maxed out Statue of Bravery. So that's one thing to take note of. And obviously you can also go for the Mirror Cushion for even more skill damage, just to blast your opponents down. Or let's say if you are really on a budget and you don't really have a lot of like all these good accessories or merches, then you can go for your Eugene bike figure for all light type units. So that is basically the equipments portion. Let us move on to the next part of this video. So if we look at the Colosseum rankings, we won't really see a lot of Priscilla within the Colosseum. And I think I talked about it many times whenever I cover Priscilla in the past few weeks. So the main reason is obviously because of the prevalence of the Statue of Bravery. So Statue of Bravery is one of the highly recommended and strongest merchandise in the game, and it activates when your opponent have HP more than 40%. So yes, Priscilla does provide you with a 40% shield, but it doesn't increase your base HP. So technically a 40% shield increase is roughly the same as a 40% HP increase. And on top of that, it makes you vulnerable to Statue of Bravery, because your HP will be at above 40% for a longer period of time, which gives your opponent the much needed damage boost to burst down your unit or just nuke them down with one chain skill, weapon skill. So you don't really see a lot of Priscilla within Colosseum itself. However, if you do want to use Priscilla within Colosseum, there's actually a few combinations you can go about her. So you can pair her with your standard Lina Kamel plus 1 Ogma for overall holistic coverage in terms of your team, because 40% shield increase technically can be viewed as a 40% HP increase, so running her with Ogma will provide your whole team with a massive defense buff, and on top of that, having a 40% shield means that your whole team is a lot tankier, similar to that of FP as well, if you do not have an FP or if you do not have a Noxia. And other than that, right, you can also pair her with Noxia, right, because the shield will be stacked on top of the HP, which is multiplied by the fact that in Colosseum, the HP of the units are actually buffed. So shield within the Colosseum itself is not bad, but just countered by SSB. So if you do have such a team combination to build your Priscilla around, then I think she's a pretty decent fit. Now let's talk about the arena team setup. So I'll list down the different team combinations that can try her out with. Right, she's basically a pretty universal unit in a lot of aspects. The only party buff that doesn't go too well with her is your melee party buff, because she doesn't get any of the buff, and maybe skill damage, because skill damage party buff in general doesn't really function very well with her. But you could try her with Veronica and skill damage as well. I think it will work because her weapon skill is pretty powerful. So if you're able to chain your opponent easily with the increased weapon skill regen speed, then maybe that comp is not that bad. So you can do your range crit as usual, you can do your triple tanks with defense, HP and shield, you can do your like range defensive setup. There's a lot of different options with Priscilla. You can also try like crit defensive setup, so the sky's the limit with her, and that's what I love about Priscilla, because she is pretty strong and she's pretty versatile in terms of team building within arena itself. Now let's talk about how to use Priscilla as well as how to counter her within arena. So Priscilla is an extremely strong unit in arena because she has a ton of win conditions. Number one, she can out-treat you, right, with her very beefy defensive stats as well as her good offensive abilities. She's able to out-treat you and then just simply kill you off before you kill her. Secondly, she has a really good weapon skill which can chain easily if you do not take notice, you know, in terms of your positioning and stuff. So if that happens, right, she's gonna chain you and then kill you eventually as well. So that's the second way she can win. The third way she can win is she can maintain in her unleashed form and then avoid direct confrontation and then use HP advantage to trade and win the HP war from there, because her HP bar will always be at 100% behind a shield, and if you do not remove her shield, right, and she managed to lower your HP by maybe like 20-30%, then she would have won in terms of the HP trade. Because in terms of the HP calculation for arena, they base it on your HP percentage. So that's one way you can win with Priscilla as well, and that's why I really love her, because she's very flexible and she has a ton of win condition if you do decide to use her. And another tips and tricks that I can give to you guys when you want to use her is to take note of keeping a safe distance but proccing the unleash ability as fast as possible, because yes, she does have a good defensive stat, and yes, she's able to trade efficiently with a lot of different units, but at the end of the day, she's still a range unit, so you want to maintain her range advantage so that you can, you know, like abuse your enemy to chase after you, or you can use your range attacks to poke your enemies and then you force them to do some HP trades, because like I mentioned earlier, you can win by just having more HP compared to your enemies. So that's like something to take note of if you are a Priscilla user. Another thing to take note of is her weapon skill, because her weapon skill has a very fast animation. The moment you click her weapon skill and you have an enemy in sight, right, she will activate the skill immediately, and then if your enemies stand at the same spot for too long, then they will get like 3 or 4 ticks, and you only require about 6 or 7 ticks to fully chain with Priscilla. So sometimes 2 weapon skill, but most of the time you take 3 weapon skills to chain with her. So if you're using Priscilla, those are the tips and tricks to use her, as well as the different win conditions you have with her within the game mode. So next up, let's talk about her counters. Firstly, I think to deal with Priscilla, you want a unit with a little bit of range advantage, or a unit that simply hits her really hard, really fast before she's able to chain you. So units which fit such a description is number 1, Arena, obviously, because she's the strongest arena unit and one of the strongest basic unit in the game. And we also have FK, because FK deals a lot of damage. You throw FK in a melee crit team and then she's gonna chainsaw Priscilla down if she's able to stick close to her. And one more unit which is also very good against Priscilla is none other than Nari, because Nari has like a same attack range compared to Priscilla. So if she's able to stick to Priscilla and then hit her really hard, Nari is also a good answer against Priscilla. So as for the other melee units, I won't say that they are not good against her. But even if you're a basic melee unit, like I mentioned, she has a movement speed buff, so if you can't really chase her down, you might eventually get chained by her. So units such as Sohee, units such as Lan, they are not bad answers, but they might not be the best, at least in terms of directly countering Priscilla itself. Another effective way you can deal with Priscilla is you could actually do a mono earth build or direct damage build, so that you can kill her as fast as possible even before she do anything to you. But then again, I think Priscilla can withstand some of the range comms if she has the correct unit matched into your team, so that wouldn't be the recommended method. But like I mentioned earlier, SSB basically counters her party buff to a certain extent, so running multiple damage units as well as having an SSB on all your units will also be a decent answer to Priscilla. In terms of the technical aspects, when you see a Priscilla, I think you need to understand that Unleash is a very important part of the kit because it gives her movement speed boost, it gives her a better attack animation, and it provides her with a little bit of heal. So you kind of want to reduce the time that she has within Unleash. So if you have the opportunity, you want to avoid her normal attacks so that she cannot transform so easily, and this will give you a slightly better edge when dealing with her because she will have to chase after you and then you have to run away, and you have a better initiative to use your weapon skill against her. Another thing to take note of with Priscilla is that in her Unleashed form, she'll have a movement speed boost. So unless you're able to effectively use your weapon skill on her and let it on her, I suggest that you hold your weapon skill to find the correct opportunity when she drops from her Unleashed form to use it on her. Because if you don't use your weapon skills correctly on her, right, the probability of her chaining you, having chain advantage, is really high. So that's the technical aspects. In terms of the many other small tips and tricks, I think it's a bit hard to present because Priscilla has a really good advantage against a lot of units. So you might want to look out for some of the YouTubers who covers a lot on Arena and see whether or not she will be a unit that you want to play there, and you know, just learn more about how to counter her in general. So that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Do remember to like and subscribe in order to see more videos from the channel. I'll see you guys again in my next video. Bye guys.